Hi, and welcome to using Twine 2.0 to make case studies come alive. I'm Ginny Thompson, instructional designer at Online at VCU Alt Lab. After this presentation, you'll be able to get started using Twine 2.0 and understand how this free open source tool can be used to create branching scenarios for your students that support decisions contained in cases you may use in the classroom or any other choices contained in your course. So let's get started. We're first going to talk about case studies and how they're commonly used in teaching. Then we're going to get into examples of case studies in Twine. I will provide you with a Twine 2.0 demo. And finally, we'll close out with how to get started with your project. So this is an example of a case study. Most case studies present what happened in a narrative format and are followed with discussion questions and follow-up activities. A common activity would be for a group of students or an individual student to present to the class about the case, covering the issues involved, problems facing the person or company, and a series of recommendations for resolving the problems. Usually, things close out with a discussion and students have to defend their ideas. The end of this presentation has resources on finding case studies if you're interested in getting started. So, what are some common features of case-based learning? Typically, they focus on real-world problems or representation of a real problem. And usually what makes case studies so useful educationally is because the information is complex. Students begin to appreciate grayness of applying theories to real life situations and requires decision making. Oftentimes, case studies have a story that makes cases all the more interesting for learners. And finally, some cases present an interesting and provoking issue and really causes the learner to have empathy with central characters. What are some of the benefits to case-based learning? Typically, it's the advantage of applying concepts in the course to real-world problems, and in doing so, really flexing the experience with building analytic skills. Oftentimes, if students are working in small groups, students benefit from having to discuss things and work on projects together. And also, sometimes this happens where students are forced to make connections from one subject to another that doesn't typically happen in a course. One of the things I want to talk to you about is an idea presented by a man named Roland Christensen, and he was a leader in case-based learning at Harvard University, and he proposed this idea of three forms of teaching cases. And the first is the one I just described, where students are typically reading a case, but they are experiencing it more at the observer level. The next level is when you assign role playing and students begin to advocate for the particular role of the character in the case study. And finally, Roland Christensen posits that there is a third way to do it, which is where you really get students to ask, what would I do? And students be much more immersed in the case study. So this is where I started thinking about the combining case studies with Twine, which historically was started as an interactive fiction tool in 2009. It was created by Chris Klimas. And so I saw some commonalities between case studies and Twine because both meet in the sense that it's story-based, and the nature of Twine allows you to branch. And so this middle circle here, I started to realize that this is a really good tool to support branching decision making and exploring consequences for different paths taken or not taken in a case study. So this is Twine, and what you're looking at in the right-hand corner is the icon for Twine. And then the screenshot is showing a twine, and it's made up, all the white boxes are passages, and the lines with arrows are links to other passages. And it's simple hypertext. This tool is free, it's open source, and I'm going to show you how you can get started using it. This happens to actually be a screenshot of the case study that I adapted for Twine called, I called it Guiding Anna, and I will be showing that to you shortly. So first I want to just, you might be wondering what interactive fiction is, and so I just wanted to give you a quick demo of interactive fiction using Twine, and this particular one is called Queers in Love at the End of the World. And it's almost like poetry. It's very minimalistic, and there's a timer, so I'm going to show it to you now. So minimalistic, we click on begin, and in the end, like you always said, it's just the two of us, the two of you together. You have 10 seconds, but there's so much you want to do, and you have to choose something. Oh, I didn't get there in time. So now we can restart, and we'll click on this link, and you have a choice of the way you want to proceed through this story. So just wanted to very quickly show you one example of Twine for interactive fiction. And now what I want to share with you is the case study that I adapted. And I'm going to go through all these different links here. So this is the example of Guiding Anna, which I created. The case study was about a novice assistant principal, and she, in the case, it told a story of the principal asking the assistant principal to handle a discipline case. It turned out that the high school student involved in viewing pornographic material on the computer turned out to be the son of her second cousin, and the assistant principal was taken aback when the principal asked her to handle this discipline situation. And what I ended up doing is adapting this so that we aren't experiencing this as an observer. We're actually given choices and exploring different pathways that the assistant principal could have taken instead of saying yes to the principal, which is what happened in the case. I modified the case to bring in another character, and so anyone using this is the friend and advisor to the assistant principal, Anna Garcia. So this is the backdrop for the story. We scroll down. Can you guide Anna? Sure, let's get started. And then this is the situation that I just explained, that the assistant principal has been asked by Principal Grant to discipline a family member. And you know that from the case she said yes, but we can say no here as an alternate choice. And so I added some artistic license to the case and explored what response the principal would have had for her saying no. I assume that the principal wouldn't have liked that. So that was the consequence for that choice. If we go back and say yes, I added a little bit more to the case, little narrative here, explaining the consequence of her saying yes. And it's branching again for the learner to get more information or to continue on. And if we choose to get more information, it goes on and links out to some resources on the internet to have the assistant principal look at some policies to help her make some decision. So this is just an example of a way to make a case have more choices, and you can bring in resources. So you can see that not only can you link for different choices that the pathways that you can choose, but also link to web-based resources. So this is a Twine activity that I created called Guiding Anna. Here's some other examples. These are Twine-based activities created also at Virginia Commonwealth University, and this one focuses on implicit bias. And while this particular example was not based on a case per se, and was really meant to be the introduction to a module in an online course, it contains some of the same decisions that would be in a case. This one has to do with a hiring situation, and we'll say let's begin. And the learner is tasked with reviewing resumes and is forced to make a decision simply based on the information presented here, which is the names of the candidates. So we see Chelsea Daly, and we have information about where she resides, where she went to school, her employment history, as well as John Sanders, same thing, address, where he went to school, and his employment history. And we're forced to make a decision. These two candidates are otherwise comparable. Make a decision based on this information. And so if we choose one, let's say we choose Chelsea, then in this learning activity, the students are given some thinking questions about why they chose this candidate and not John. And this is designed to be an activity where students are reflecting in a journal. They're not having a whole class discussion about implicit bias and their own biases. So this is just one way it can be used. This Twine activity, you can output it as a file, and then you can upload it to a course in Blackboard, or you can upload it to a website such as WordPress or any other website that you might be using. So that's another example. Another one is a medical decision activity, and this one was not created at VCU. And this one is similar in that it presents profiles of patients, and the learner in this case is a physician. Click on the link for Stephen and read through some of the symptoms that this patient is having, and then you can elect to click on either one of these links here, and it brings some more information, and then you are prompted with a decision. Should you take a few moments to review Stephen's past history? We'll say yes. And then after reviewing the history, you are prompted to continue. What do you suggest? And so forth. So you can see how this is another branching scenario for the learner. Another way that Twine has been used, as in the same way case studies contain role-playing, this one is role-playing. It has to do with, it's called Choice Texas, and it has to do with the politics of access to reproductive health care. And it has a profile, composite profile of a variety of young women. And we can go through the scenario. It has a backstory on Maria, and you continue. And all of these characters are facing a pregnancy and different life situations. And as we read through the story, the learner gains more empathy for young women that are facing choices like this, and gives them a better understanding of the importance of access to reproductive health care. So this is based, the backdrop of this is created in Twine. However, you can see that this has lots of high quality graphics. And so we'll go back to our other examples. And finally, this link here is a link to a website where an individual has grabbed many Twine activities that students have created. So one of the things I'd like to suggest is that in addition to faculty creating branching scenario activities for students, that it would also be a great learning experience if students were tasked with creating a branching scenario using Twine. So later on, you can look through these examples that were made by students. Okay, so let's get started having a look at Twine. This is the web address, www.twinery.org. And I suggest that you use Twine 2.0. There is a version 1 as well. This is the home page. This is what it looks like. And I recommend that you download the software. But for this demo, I'm going to be using it online. And the other thing I want to point out is the Twine Wiki and the Twine 2 guide. This has a lot of great information about getting started and how to create your first story. This link here is a great little tutorial, very similar to what I'm going to step you through in just a minute. And it has all the text and all the directions for starting your first story. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to go back to the home page of Twine. And to get started, I'm going to click on Use It Online. But before I do that, I just want to explain something quickly. Whether you download Twine or you elect to use it online, the file gets saved in your browser, and you need to be very careful that if you have invested a lot of time in your project, to download it to your computer so that you store it safely, because if the cache is cleared in your browser, then you lose whatever projects are stored in the browser, whether you use the software version downloaded or using it online. Okay, so this is a little prompt here. I'm going to say skip, and this is what it looks like. This is how you get started with your story. Click on the story button, and then we can give it a name. All right, and then you are given automatically a passage, and you'll notice that there's a little green, it's hard to see, but this is a rocket ship, and this indicates that this is the beginning of your story, and you can change the rocket ship and put it on another passage to have another starting point if you want. Double click here to get started, and I'm just going to do kind of a silly story here and say a scary monster came into the room, and what should you do? And anything you put in brackets is automatically going to generate another passage. So I'm going to just do some choices here. And then I click on this X button to close it, and you'll notice now it generated 2 additional passages. And we can test out our story just by clicking on play. And here we have the beginning of a very basic story. And you can use this arrow to get back. And I'm going to go back to this tab, and you can see the story here. And what I want to show you is how you can download the file. You go to My Story, and you go Publish to File, and you'll see here that it generates an HTML file, which you then can drag to your desktop and then store it safely if you use Google Drive or what have you. And then ultimately, if you want to upload that to a web server or to your Blackboard course, that's how that works. And so just very quickly, that is the basics of Twine. I'm going to go back to the Twine homepage, and I'm going to go back to this wiki here. And I want to show you very quickly over here in the Twine 2 guide, there are a lot of resources here. So if you would like to add an image or a video, you simply copy. So for instance, to add an image, you copy this code here and you go back to your passage and paste it in. And then once you've found the image that you want to display here, you copy the web address for the image right there. So a very easy way to look for images is within Google, do a keyword search, look for images, choose an image. Actually, let me back up a minute. What I'd like you to do is go to Settings and Advanced and scroll down to Free to Use or Share. That way you will only be seeing images that are not copyright protected. And actually go to the image. And grab the link. And go back to your Twine story. Paste in the web address. And now you can see an image in there. So it's pretty simple in terms of adding images and videos. You can also add sound effects. There's a lot of resources there. And change the background of Twine, the color. There's a number of things you can do beyond basic things I've just showed you here. So that's it for a quick demo of Twine. So you might be thinking yourself, how can you use Twine for your teaching or with your students? One of the things I want to share with you is just the basics of planning a project. First thing I recommend is to just simply immerse yourself in Twine, get a little bit of experience using the tool. Also, if you are really wanting to plan out a branching scenario, it's often a great idea to do design on the whiteboard using Post-it notes, index cards, what have you. Plan it out before you start working. And then thinking about where you're going to host your Twine activity, whether or not it's in your Blackboard Learn course or on a website. This website here has more information about stepping you through planning your project. One more thing I want to share with you, these two websites have great resources. This one here, Experience Play, is from the University of Oklahoma, and the two gentlemen here have worked with the faculty there to create lots of Twine activities, and you'll see from the website that there are a collection of Twine activities that they are sharing. These are this is actually just the program page, but if you go to play, you'll see a list of Twine activities. This is the one I shared with you earlier. These are not necessarily from the program, but these here are faculty-made games and again, student-made games. There's also a more comprehensive list here as well of more Twine activities that you can look at. But this website will step you through the process of planning your Twine activity, producing it, polishing it, and publishing it. So I think it's pretty useful. And this one is a individual at the University of Wisconsin, and she teaches writing, and her website has lesson plans for teaching Twine in the classroom with students. Some of the final resources in this presentation are a collection of links to the Twine website, other resources for learning Twine, websites for free hosting of your Twine, and then this book, which is a digital version of the book, focuses on interactive fiction writing with Twine, and it has a nice section on just learning Twine. This site here, these two websites have to do with getting access to cases. This one is a database for science-related cases, and this one is more general in nature. So very excited if anyone wants to get in touch with me to get any more information about using Twine in case studies. Thank you.